Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and this is set number 10316, The Lord of the Rings Rivendell from the LEGO Lord of the Rings theme. This set contains 6,167 pieces, 15 minifigures, and will retail for $499.99 in the US. This set does not officially release until March 8th, 2023, but it was sent to me early by the LEGO group through the LEGO Master Network, but all opinions expressed in this video are my own. Before I get started with this review, I'd just like to ask you guys please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I do early reviews just like this one all the time, and I also have a lot of other content on the channel that I'm pretty proud of, so if you end up liking what you see here and you want to see more, by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, it'll help put my videos in your feed as soon as they're posted, and also really help support me and the channel. But with all that being said, let's get on to this review. Let's take a look at the giant D2C Rivendell. So here is the full build of Rivendell, and wow, this thing is massive. It is an absolutely beautiful set, just seeing it all displayed out like this. I am thoroughly impressed. There's so many little details all throughout this build, so I'm going to take you through each of them one by one. First though, starting out just looking at the set like this, I want to show you how it can be taken apart, because of course if you have the space you can just display this full set, but something I actually quite like is if you don't have room for all of this, you can actually separate the build into different parts and just display the parts you like the most. So of course you've got the big main building with the seats for the council out front, and then off to the side you have like this forest area which has the bridge, this little waterfall, and the gazebo, as well as like a little elven forge underneath. But this entire like wilderness section can be removed from the main build. In fact, it's not actually connected at all, so you can just slide it out super easily. Now I do recommend if you get this set and you do want to display the full thing together, you might want to replace those Technic pieces in there, because as I just mentioned, the builds don't actually connect, but if you replace them with black Technic pins, they actually would, and that would just make the build more stable, because I have noticed without the builds actually connecting, sometimes they come a little bit out of place, and you can see that a little bit on the other side too, because the one side of the building that has this tower right here, this can also be removed. So the build split up into these three main sections, and that's not everything that's removable with the build, but this is how I'm going to divide up the build to actually review the set. So starting with the side of the building that has the tower, you can see on the very end we have a proper entrance to the building, and I quite like how this is done. You have a few stairs right here for minifigures to actually get up, and then they use these tentacle pieces to create like these archways right here, which I actually think look really great. Definitely fit like the overall vibes of Rivendell, and just creates a very beautiful entranceway for this building. You can also see the building is built on top of like these jagged rocks, so you'll see all throughout the build, there'll be lots of different like angles and slope pieces, just to make the terrain look a little bit uneven, which helps it feel a lot more natural, and that's another thing I really like. Moving into the interior of this first level, and it's relatively plain, there's a somewhat elegant bed built on top of this carpet right here, and behind that's a bookshelf with some gold detailing. I do like the use of those tendril pieces, definitely fit very well here. And then there's some candles in the back of the room right by the doorway, but other than that, that's about all there is to the room. There's just tons of room to pose figures. It's just a huge open space. You could probably fit the entire cast of minifigures from this set in this room, so that's a bit of a mixed bag. Would I have liked more detail here? Yeah, but also you could definitely customize that yourself, and I have to say this is a more realistic approach than smaller LEGO sets take. Like with smaller LEGO sets, they try to jam-pack them full of details. With this though, they were just fine with leaving it open, so honestly I really don't mind it, especially because there are other parts of this build that are just so jam-packed with details that I really can't complain about a little bit being open, because yeah, it's just a great place to pose figures. You can see right here are the technicals that connect this to the rest of the build as well. But now moving up to the upper level, this is significantly more interesting. So this is meant to be the room where in the movies we could see Bilbo working on his book, and also where we see Frodo first wake up in Rivendell, and they captured it absolutely perfectly. It has everything it needs. First, it has a much more elegant elven bed, with stickered pieces to represent the detail on the sheets. There's also another stickered piece behind it to represent the elven statue that was behind the bed, and then more of those golden tendrils surrounding it. Then there's a little footstool at the base of the bed, as well as a little chest behind it. This chest piece, of course, can be removed. And if we open it up, you can see inside is the two gifts that Bilbo gives to Frodo. We have the mithril shirt, which is of course a stickered piece. And then of course we have Frodo's sword. This is not actually the same piece from the first Lord of the Rings line. It was redesigned here. The first one was pretty close to perfect, but this one is ever so slightly better. So it's nice to see that I made that change, and of course this is an important accessory to be included here. But anyway, putting the chest back down and coming back to the build, we next have the little seating area where Bilbo is writing his book. You can see there's a proper chair for him to sit in, but it's currently moved off to the side so we can stand there instead. There's two little candles, a quill and ink, and then you actually get Bilbo's book. You can see there's a sticker piece on the inside to show that it is his book, and if you close it up, there's a sticker piece on the front too, which looks exactly like the book does in the movie. Now moving back outside to take a look back at the tower, you can see the base of the tower has these statues. You get a total of 6 of them in this set, and while there are slight differences between each one, they use these same few pieces. So they each have this same printed torso piece, which is just this gray robe, which is designed to look like it's built into stone. stone. Very similar thing with the face, where the printing is all gray to make it look like it's all carved. And then each of the statues either has normal minifigure legs or a dress piece, both of which are unprinted. And then there's two different hair pieces across the tube as well. They either have like this long straight hair piece, which I believe was originally introduced for Dumbledore in the Lego Harry Potter line, or like this curlier hair, which I know has been used on like Scarlet Witch and Lego Marvel. These statues each have back torso prints and alternate faces as well, where the alternate face is just slightly more angry, and the back torso print is just more of the robe. But if you get this set, it's up to you whether you want to display them with the happy face or the angry face. You'll see in this set I displayed them all with the happier face, but of course you can change that if you want, it's Lego. Here you can see are the other three statues. Again, they continue to alternate those hair pieces, but you can see only the ones on the very end have the dresses, while this one in the center still has legs despite having the same hair piece as the one with the dress. So yeah, just a very slight variation between them. Still though, I think they're super cool minifigures, obviously fit very well with the build, but they're also just awesome to get in general. These don't necessarily have to be Lord of the Rings figures. You can use them in your own mocks or for your own original characters. I think they're super cool and I love that you get so many of them. Anyway, you can see there's more foliage at the base of this build. There's like this all new fern piece, which I wasn't sure how I felt about from official pictures, but having it in hand and like actually using it in the build, I actually think it works pretty well. You can see you can stack multiples on top of each other to create a slightly different shape, and I do think it looks really good. Also at the base of this build, there's like this little bit of foliage which can be moved out of the way, and that reveals this little tiny hole at the base of the build. It doesn't really go anywhere, so I'm not entirely sure what the point of it is. If it's like a reference to something from the movies, I don't recognize it. I talked to one of my friends who's more familiar with Lord of the Rings than I am, and even he didn't know what's going on here. So yeah, if anyone in the comments knows like what this is supposed to represent in particular, let me know. But yeah, as far as I can tell, it's just a small hole in the base of the build. Anyway, now moving up the tower, I love the shaping here. The use of these pyramid pieces is really smooth. Helps create like a very nice polygonal shape around the building with no gaps, and that's something I really appreciate. It looks fantastic. You got a few windows right here, and this lets light into like where Bilbo's writing his book, and then moving up even higher than that. These rounded pieces in the sand green color I believe is an all new recolor for this set. They work absolutely perfectly and also just a great new piece to get. And then coming up to the very top, of course the building ends in a nice point, but the shape all around it's great too. I love the way it sort of blossoms out and then converges back in. And then there's a little bit of a platform here that could probably fit a minifigure if you wanted to. There's no way like in universe for a character to get up here, like there's no stairs or anything, but if you wanted to put one in there it still definitely fits. But yeah, absolutely beautiful architecture of the tower. What else is there to say? Hey guys, quick note, this tower's supposed to have this golden spike at the top of it. I must have accidentally knocked it off at some point and I just didn't notice, so I filmed the review without it. But yeah, I just want to point out that's supposed to be here just like on the smaller one. It will not be present for most of the review, but you guys will see when I realize and I put it back on. Doesn't change the overall look too much. Definitely helps the tower look a bit nicer. However, of course, as you can see, if you're not careful with the set, it's one of those pieces that's prone to fall off very easily. So yeah, I just want to let you know about that. Now back to the pre-recorded footage. The roof right here uses all these multicolored tiles, and of course that's used on the big main part of the building too. Now when this set was revealed, I was really worried about this because I was like, how am I supposed to align all those things? And I saw a lot of comments wondering that too. Luckily, the designers actually thought about that, and they actually give you advice in the instructions on how to do it. Basically, you're just supposed to throw them on there haphazardly, and then it advises you to use either a plate or a tile, and sort of just go in between them like this. So if any of the tiles are misaligned like that, and you come through the plate, it'll sort of line them up. And while it's not entirely perfect, it definitely helps the process. It made this a lot less of a headache than I was expecting it to be. My one little complaint with this set is this piece right here. No, don't get me wrong, this looks good and this is accurate to Rivendell in universe, but this increases the footprint of this build ever so slightly, and there's one of these on each side. So if you try to display this build on the shelf, and you only have just enough room available, this little build might be enough to like push you over the edge for the building not to fit. So it's definitely a little bit annoying. However, it's also very easily removable if you want to remove it, so it's not a huge deal. But yeah, if this was going to be extended out like that, I kind of wish the base was extended out too, because I don't know, it feels silly to me that this little tiny build extends the footprint of this build so much. But that's coming from somebody who does not have a lot of space, so little things like that do bother me. But if you already have a lot of room to display your Lego sets, that probably won't bother you too much. And then one last thing for this part of the build is the very back. I love this design at the top with the white tendrils and the Nexonite shield. Feels very regal. And then below that you have a sticker to represent a painting, and of course the painting depicts one of the very first scenes in the movie, where Sauron shatters Narsil. That makes sense to be here and it looks great. The graphic designers did a fantastic job. But I think that's about it for the side tower part of the building, so now let's move on to the next part of the build. I'm going to skip the main building and council part of the build for now, and instead move on to the wilderness area on the other side, which of course features the bridge, the waterfall, the gazebo, quite a bit of foliage, and then a little blacksmith shop, so let's take a look up a little bit closer. So this part of the build has less like movie references and whatnot, and instead it's just really detailed, nice looking terrain. So personally it's my favorite part of the build, because I just think this looks fantastic. Starting off, once again you can see here the technicals to connect the us to the main part of the build. But then we have this cascading waterfall at the back. I absolutely adore how this is designed. I love how asymmetrical it is, with the water coming from different levels, just this random rock in the middle. It all feels very natural. The use of the white bricks to represent the waves crash was a fantastic choice, and the shaping on it's absolutely perfect. And that comes down to like this flatter river area, which of course goes underneath this bridge. And then at the very end where the set ends, once again it has the water cascading, implying that there's more underneath this. I just think that's so effectively communicated. I love how no two parts of this body of water are exactly the same. It's just done so well. I love this wall of terrain too that comes up to the gazebo, how there's studs coming out the sides but also the top. I feel like I'm saying the word natural a lot in this review, but it does feel very natural. It doesn't feel pre-planned or artificial. It genuinely feels like it could be straight out of nature, with all the different angles and colors and everything. I apologize if I'm repeating myself too much, but this is just beautiful and I'm just in awe of it, and I just can't help but talk about how much I love it. But anyway, now moving on to this less natural terrain, you have this little bridge right here which looks simple in theory, but it's actually still pretty impressive. I love how smooth it looks while still having studs to pose figures, and it does create just that perfect archway over the water. On the other side of that, you're still raised up on this hill. You can see there's more of those new fern pieces, as well as once again a combination of that dark tan and olive green. And then there's two sets of steps here. One that comes down to the forest, and the other that comes up into the gazebo. So first let's start by taking a look inside the gazebo. Now the gazebo is actually one of the parts of the build that could be individually removed. So I'm going to do that for convenience right here so we can take a better look at it. But yeah, it's just super easy. Pops out of place like this. So if you don't have room to display this full set, you can display just this build on its own. And you can also do that with a few of the other builds of this set, which we will get to later. So here's the gazebo build detached. I mean, the architecture of this thing, once again, is fantastic. So many different unique pieces used, like where to even begin. You have those tendrils once again, but then you also have like a life raft piece, the Ninjago Skulkin arms, a few different Tectic pieces. You have Harry Potter candlestick pieces right here, as well as Minecraft candle pieces at the very base. And then there's 6 tentacle pieces that come up to the very top to make a point. If you compare this to the design of the gazebo in the movie, I mean, it's pretty much absolutely perfect. I do not know how they could have done it better. I will say it was a bit of a pain to put together, just not the most fun part of the build in my opinion, because it's a lot of these small pieces and it's a lot of the same thing over and over again. But that's definitely worth it for how good this looks when it's finished. And I love this gray base that it's on too. Obviously it incorporates really well into the build, but it's impressive how round it is and how it's just able to stand on its own as its own build. And you can see there's a little bit of terrain built around it just to give it its own unique shape and to help it click into the rest of the build better. But no, I think it looks really good. And then you can see inside the gazebo there's a few studs to attach a minifigure if you wanted to. And then there's another small bed similar to the one on the lower level of the tower building, though with slightly different colors. But now here's a look again at how that pops back in. Very simple, you just basically place it on the build where it's supposed to go, and it fits right into place. The build's big enough that's not like gonna fall off unless you straight up turn the set upside down, because even though it doesn't snap in anywhere, it is sort of locked in by other pieces, and because the build's heavy enough, it's also not going to fly off. But anyway, now let's come down the stairs instead, and that brings us to the more natural part of the build. This is a lot of plain open area. They use this dark orange color to be sort of like an autumny grass, and I think that works absolutely perfectly. And then you've got lots of different plants, including mushrooms and trees, as well as more of these like little ferns. Mushrooms, very simple, use a combination of cone pieces as well as BB-8 heads or just studs. And something kind of cool about the mushrooms is that they are actually glow-in-the-dark. They're the only glow-in-the-dark pieces in this set, but every mushroom that you see in this set is glow-in-the-dark, so even if I don't point it out in any future ones, if you see either of these builds anywhere else in the set, those are also glow-in-the-dark pieces, which is a small but fun touch. Taking a look at this actual tree build though, I like the use of these rounded tiles to be like little mushrooms actually growing off the tree. And then there's an interesting combination of colors for the foliage, using sand green, olive green, and gold, but I actually think it fits pretty well. It fits like the autumny theme. The back of this tree is definitely not its prettiest angle, but also it doesn't look terrible, and I think it's good enough. It's probably one of my least favorite parts of this build. However, that really isn't saying much because the rest of this build is so good. So here you can see there's a little entranceway to the blacksmith shop. We'll take a look at that interior in a moment, but I love how it's built into like this little hill right here underneath the gazebo. I think that's super well integrated. We've got a lantern hanging outside of it too, a little barrel with a shovel and a hammer. There's a little fireplace where I guess materials can be smelted, and then here you can see there's an anvil with a sword on top of it. That sword is a new piece for this set, however I'm not going to take a look at it right now because it does come up again later in this build. But yeah, of course fits very well with the blacksmith shop theme. And then we've got another tree with some more foliage. I really like how there's trees on the side of the hill, so the roots are sort of bursting out of the hill and coming down. Again, that's just really creative. It's not something I've really seen LEGO do before, but as I've said many times in this video, gives it a very natural feel. The tree feels a lot less artificial because it helps me believe that it's like actually burrowing into the ground. That's another small but very cool touch. But yeah, of course, we're gonna move up the hill and see the rest of the tree. You see there's more mushrooms growing off the side, just like with the other one, though this time around it uses orange and yellow foliage. which of course looks absolutely beautiful. I think I prefer these foliage colors to the other ones, but I think they both actually work together pretty well, and you can see the tree is topped off very similarly. I would say the back of this tree is about equally ugly, however the difference is the back of this tree is actually at the back of the build, so you're not going to see it as much, while the back of the other tree is on the side of the build, so I feel like it's actually very visible a lot of the time. This being at the back of the build, I really don't care how it looks. But now that we actually are at the back of this build, let's take a look at the little blacksmith shop which is underneath the gazebo. I'm going to remove the gazebo so we can get more light in there. Starting at the side, there's a little lantern on the wall, I guess, to provide light. And there's a wheel right here that can actually spin, and I guess that's what you carve the weapons on. And you can see right here, this is the same sword mold that was in Bilbo's chest. And then in the back, we have another new sword mold, as well as a new axe mold, and then an existing bow mold is also here. Again, I'm not going to talk about these right now, because we will see them again later in this build, but I, of course, want to point them out to you right here. And then, of course, in the center is that main entrance. That's how minifigures can actually get in. But then on the other side, there's another little weapon rack. And this once again holds that same axe, but then there's also 4 elven blades. Now these weapon racks can each be removed, and there's a look at them up a little bit closer. Very simple little builds, just a few clips to hold weapons. And of course, not every clip here is filled, so if you want to take the weapons from other parts of this build or from some of the minifigures in this set, you can display them here if you would prefer to. Now all of the weapons that you've seen so far, except for this bow, have come in a new weapon accessory set. It's similar to the ones that you see in Ninjago or like this year's Monkey Kid, where it's a set of like 12 different weapons that come in like their own little bag, and you get 2 of each of them. All these weapons come from a new weapon set in this set, so hopefully they'll be reused in other sets in the future. But yeah, you get 2 of every weapon except for the axes and like these longer elven swords. The axes you get 4 of, and the longer elven swords you get 4 of course, as you can see right here. As such, the elven sword's the only one that we're not going to see anywhere else in this build because they're all right here. So let's take a closer look at that one real quick. Very wacky shape to this sword, but I absolutely love it. It feels straight out of the movie, and it's the kind of thing that you really couldn't do brick built, like it really needed to be its own mold. So I'm really happy it is. I'm glad you get so many here, because you could just give this to your own characters to make like a custom elven army or something. I think it looks super cool and fits in great here. Really, really love that part. And I think that's about it for the elven forge. So there's one final thing with this build. Behind the waterfall, you have a few more mushrooms, as well as a tiny little frog, because of course LEGO always likes to include frogs in their builds. But now that's about it for this part of the build. The like more natural forest section. Again, this is definitely my favorite part, because the sculpting on the terrain is just so unique, and the like quote-unquote man-made structures incorporate so well. Additionally, while there is a lot of open area, the open area feels, well, natural, unlike an interior where open area just feels kind of empty. So yeah, I think this is super well done. The only part I really don't like is the backs of those trees, but that's just such a minor thing. Overall, I'm just very satisfied with this. But now coming to the final part of the build, the main part of the build, we have the Council of Elrond and then the big main building behind it. This is of course the largest part of the build, however it's also probably my least favorite. So let's take a look at why that is. Starting at the front, we have this little building that extends out to the side. And this part I do really like. It uses the same roof design as the rest of the build, however of course in a much smaller scale. And I think it works pretty perfectly. In the center, there's a micro figure as well as 2 unprinted white birds, which I think is a super cute touch, just to be like a little emblem at the top. The build uses like candlestick pieces to hold it up very similarly to the gazebo. And then in the very center there's a table with some leaves on it. But other than that, there's just a ton of room. You can post lots of figures in there if you wanted to. Now this part of the build's like on a very circular base, so you'd expect it to remove the same way the gazebo does. And I mean, if you took some things apart, you definitely could remove this and display it on its own, but it definitely does not pop off as easily as the gazebo does. It is meant to be built into the main build, despite looking like it might be meant to be removed. Coming around the side, you can see here's the tactic pins to connect this to the other side of the build. There's a tiny little tree right here, and then a much bigger tree behind that. I absolutely love the design of this bigger tree. It was one of those ones where it was annoying to put together because it was just the same thing over and over and over again. But I have to say, the end result is pretty darn cool. Just seeing all these leaf pieces cascade up, and I love how it has a little bit of a gradient too. The stem of the tree does leave a little bit to be desired, but it is meant to be hidden away most of the time when you have the full build together. So I get why that's not the most interesting, but yeah, the leaves on this tree are fantastic. Love how those were done. Coming back around the front of the building, you have a little bridge right here to get to the main council area. I like how there's a few little leaves that have dropped on the ground, and how natural everything seems around the tree with like some ferns sprouting up, a few roots coming out the bottom, and there's even a few small mushrooms behind the tree. But then the tree itself, I think this trunk is incredibly well done. The use of the pipe pieces is super smart, and it's incorporated so well, like there's no gaps or anything. It feels very natural, very well sculpted. Moving up the tree though, that falls off a little bit. It does become a little bit flat. Not a ton, but definitely does not look as good as the base. But then getting up to the top, you can see all the different foliage. And I mean, color-wise, I think it looks good. I like how they used all different colors of leaves. You've got the orange ones, lime green ones, as well as bright green ones. And then the use of these smaller leaf pieces, of course, on the bigger foliage pieces. That's a nice touch too. You saw they did that in the other trees earlier in this video. However, my issue with this is it just feels kind of open. It reminds me a lot of the Tree of Souls from LEGO Avatar, and then I feel like it needs more cover. Because I don't know, the tree feels a little bit bare bones. There's lots of gaps in it. I kind of wish the leaves felt more full, similar to the LEGO Ideas treehouse set. Because if you compare this to the movie, this is a huge tree full of leaves. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of leaves here, but I don't know, especially in person, it just feels very gappy. So I just wish there was a bit more foliage here. However, that's something you could probably customize with not too much difficulty if it's something that bothers you, but it is something I wanted to point out. We've of course got the council chamber in the center, which we'll take a look at in a moment, but surrounding that you have a more natural path. Again, it's made to look like it's built on top of rocks, and I love how the positions of the studs change, and all the little bits of plant life poking out. But now, the Council of Elrond. This is probably the most iconic part of this build, and I think the designers did a fairly good job with it. I'm not 100% satisfied, but there's a lot of aspects that are really, really good. So starting with the parts I like, we of course have this little platform in the center where the one ring is supposed to go. You just place it on top like this. There's a really unique shape to that platform too. It's built using LEGO Minecraft shulker pieces, which is very creative parts usage. I'm happy to see they found a use for that piece outside of LEGO Minecraft. And yeah, I mean, it works great. It creates the shape of the table perfectly. And the shape overall just feels very unique for LEGO. Then you have this sort of like star design in the center, and these are all actually printed pieces. You get 4 of these 2x2 points, and 4 of these Nexonite shields. But again, that really adds to the high quality of this set. And then there's Elrond's chair at the very back, and then 7 other seats surrounding it. Now, Elrond's chair I think looks really good. The characters who have dress pieces in this set, including Elrond, do come with like alternate leg pieces to be able to sit in their chairs. So there's how he looks actually sitting in the chair, and I mean, yeah, that looks pretty good. But anyway, yeah, now the chairs themselves. I really like Elrond's chair, but the rest of them I feel like leave a little bit to be desired. I like them in theory, very creative parts usage with the hot dogs and the popsicle pieces. However, I feel like they really went for looks over functionality here. And while yeah, this is meant to be a display set, not a play set, I don't know, I'm just still not a fan of these. So number one, there's no way to really hold them in place. Even if you're not like actively playing with this set, you accidentally knock something, boom, you knock the back of the chair over. So it's just a little inconvenient to constantly have to be fixing that. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. But the part that bothers me a little bit more is only 3 chairs are actually connected to the base of the build. The 2 on the ends and the 1 on the middle. And here, I can actually remove them to show you that. There's how the build looks with the chairs removed. So as such, the like 4 in-between chairs don't have a place to really lock in place. But because all the chairs connect to each other, there's a bit of awkward positioning with them, where you have to try to orient them the right way. And yeah, you can orient them in a way that looks good, but again, it's just another thing for you to accidentally knock out of place. And then finally, the chairs at the very end. You can see one arm of the chair is up significantly higher than the other. That's because one arm of the chair has like this gray piece at the base, while the other arm doesn't. Now, yes, you could fix this by just raising this up higher a little bit, but that's just another part of the build where if you accidentally bump it, boom, it's going to get pushed down over time. So I don't know, if you build this absolutely perfectly and then never touch it, yeah, it's not going to be an issue. But part of me wishes the builds of these chairs were just a little bit simpler so that they would be just a little bit less annoying. I like them in theory, but I'm just not a super big fan of them in execution. You guys let me know in the comments what you think though. Does this bother you, or do you not mind how they were done? Now, there's one more thing with this part of the build. It, of course, is able to be removed. There is a little Easter egg in the base of the build, because when you remove the council, right underneath like where the ring is kept, you can see there's a brick-built Eye of Sauron sort of staring through the ring. That is a very fun touch. But yeah, the Council of Elrond and the tree behind it can be displayed on their own. And honestly, I think the build still looks pretty good like that. If you don't have a ton of space, but you're a really big Lord of the Rings fan, this is a totally viable option if you were to just display the set like this and bag up the rest of it. So I'm happy that option's there. Now coming to the sides, here we have once again the other set of Technic pins. This is the area that connects to the other actual part of the building. So you can see there's a little doorway to get from one part to another. And then there's also a sticker piece right here, which is kind of hidden away when the set's all put together. You can see it from the lower floor of the other part of the building, but it's definitely a lot less out in the open. But anyway, this is a little portrait of the forging of the elven rings. And then we get to the very back of the main interior. There's a lot going on here, so let's take a closer look at each bit of it. So first off, the floor is covered in these printed tiles, and yes, they are printed, they are not stickers. You get a lot of them in this set, but it looks super cool seeing so many of the same print covering the floor here. And of course, it is very, very accurate to the movies. But then inside the build, you just have a few different desks with different maps and whatnot on them. You can see this desk has a quill on it, as well as a map of Middle-earth. Right here, there's another little desk. This is a candle and some ink and another like little map. I can't point to exactly what this one is, so if anybody knows, please let me know in the comments. Looking inside, there's a few more desks that just have like a chalice and a candle on them, as well as more of those like double candles that we saw in the first building. And like the center back, they use the printed Nexonite shield pieces again that we saw at the council, with the spikes on them to create like this sort of star shape. And then off to the side, there's one more of the little desks. Once again, it has a candle and some ink, and yet another stickered map. This time it looks like it's a map of Mordor. And then at the very end there's actually a triple candelabra, which is brick built and uses the Harry Potter candelabra piece actually upside down, which is very creative. I love how this looks, which looks really nice. However, it's another one of those things that falls out of place if you accidentally hit it. Again, not too difficult to fix, but there's just so many of those little things in this set that's hard to keep track of all of them, especially if you plan on like playing with the set at all. Now in the very back here, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's essentially on the opposite side of like the ring forging painting. You have this giant blue banner. Let me remove it so you can see it up a little bit closer. This banner, I believe, is to represent the High Elves in Lord of the Rings, which is a very cool touch. Now moving to the other side of the interior, here we have a little staircase. I apologize if it's a bit difficult to see like where it actually is, but you can see it starts on the left side right behind the desk, and then it actually wraps around a bit. You can see this exits out into that area with the table that we looked at before. There's also like this golden sextant build right here, which once again uses an upside down candelabra piece. I think it looks really pretty. I especially love that like one golden ring. However, I'm not sure if it's referencing anything in particular. It's another one of the things on the set that I just couldn't identify, and as much as I googled around, I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So if this is a direct reference to something in the movies or in the books, let me know in the comments. But regardless, I just think it looks really cool. But anyway, then there's a little stairway which gets you to the upper level. You can see once again that desk is right underneath these stairs, and that leads you to this very thin upper level where you can see you can indeed still post figures, but it's only 2 studs wide, so there's not a ton of room. However, in the very center we have the statue which holds the sword, and this is of course a shattered sword to represent the Shards of Narsil. This is once again an all new mold for this set, and it's a part of the same accessory pack that all the other weapons are a part of, and you do get 2 of this piece in this set, even though only 1 is actually used. You can see this is also the 6th statue figure. It uses the same pieces as the other ones, just with that curlier hair piece and with that dress. This is of course a great inclusion though, just an iconic part of the movie, and I think it's represented really well here. I just wish the area around it was a little bit bigger. But yeah, then this upper level sort of cuts off at the end. When you have the other part of the building attached, of course you're able to enter into like Bilbo's study from here, but when it's detached there's really not much to do. Up above in this area though, you have a few more sticker painting pieces. This one is of Numenor, and then the other one is of the sailboat, though I'm not entirely sure if it's meant to be like any specific boat in particular. There's another point at the top of this tower, which is very similar to how the other tower was done, though at a slightly smaller scale. And then of course the roof's done the exact same way with all the different tiles. I guess the final thing to point out is the architecture right around the council area. That leads you from the council seating area into the main interior, and I think this looks really, really good. Lots of those like white tendril pieces, combined with like white tentacle pieces, candlestick pieces. If you compare this to how these buildings look in the movies, I mean, it's pretty perfectly translated and looks really unique. One interesting part that they used here is this piece right there. That, I believe, is like a cupcake piece from Lego Dots, so it's surprising to see that reused here, but I think it works surprisingly well. But that's about it for the big main centerpiece of Rivendell, and as I said, it's definitely my least favorite section. There is definitely parts I like, especially like the building on the side I think looks really good, the very natural aspect I think looks great, but this is really the only part of the set where I feel like there's room for improvement. The other 2 sections are pretty darn close to perfect, but this one, I don't know, I wish the chairs were a bit more consistent, I wish the tree had more cover in it, and then I wish the interior just felt a little more full, because despite this having a massive footprint, I feel like there's actually not that much in the interior. It's just a lot of the same things over and over again. And like the area with the statue, I don't know, I wish there was more foot space. But I want to make it clear, that's not to say I don't like this part of the build. In fact, I think it's still fantastic. I just think it's the weakest part of the set, but it's still very, very good. So here is one last look at everything all put back together, and I do have to say, as one full piece, it does look great. I do genuinely love the build of this set, and I think the size is absolutely massive for the price, even though the price itself is very, very high. There is one more little thing I'll mention, which I don't even know if it's a criticism, but it is just something I want to point out, is there is a slight curve to the build. You can see the building is oriented one way, and then it sort of goes at an angle for the more natural section. That does look good, don't get me wrong, but it just makes it a little more annoying to display, because it doesn't have just a flat back, it has an angled back, so it's not as easy as just sliding it into the shelf. It does increase the footprint ever so slightly. So again, if you're low on space, that does make this a little more annoying to store, but it's definitely not a huge deal. And again, it does look really good and does help it feel a bit more natural, but I still thought it was something worth pointing out. But I think that's about all I have to say on the main build of this set, at least for the time being. I'll talk about it a bit more at the end of this video, but for now, let's take a look at the 15 minifigures that this set comes with, not counting the extra 6 that are used as statues, which we already saw. So here are the first 3 minifigures in this set. We have Frodo, Gandalf, and Bilbo. This is an all-new version for every single character in this set. Like, it's not reusing the versions from the original, like, 2013 version of this theme. And I think some of the characters are improvements, others less so. But yeah, starting with Bilbo right here, one obvious major improvement is the new leg piece. He has dual molded legs in brown and light nougat to represent the bare feet that all the hobbits have. I think the torso looks fairly nice too. They captured Frodo's little cloak pretty well, and the red undershirt looks nice underneath too. I love the tiny little green cape cape as well. He did have that on his original figure, but it's cool to see it brought back here because it does work so perfectly. And then flipping the cape up, you can see the back torso print there too. He's got the same hairpiece that he had from the original Lord of the Rings line, which again was pretty perfect. It was designed for Frodo, so it makes sense that they're still using it here. However, the one part I'm just not the biggest fan of is the face print. I think it's fine and it works well enough for Frodo. However, I just feel like the original version was better. The original one just felt more unique to the character, while this one feels like a more generic Lego face print. It's not generic because it is new for this character, but yeah, I just think the design on the older one's a bit better. Turning him around though, he does have an alternate face here if we remove this hairpiece. You can see just like on the original figure, his alternate face has his eyes going all white, and he seems like really scared, which again feels straight out of the movie. So I think the alternate face is still really good, and his default face is fine. I just feel like the older version was better. Now Gandalf didn't go through a ton of changes, still has the same beard and hat. The cape is now a cloth cape instead of a paper cape, however it's very similar obviously. One whole cape unfortunately, not a two-hole cape, but doesn't make a huge difference. However, one major difference is he now has a dress piece instead of minifigure legs, and I do think that fits him a lot better. He does also come with an alternate hairpiece, which is a nice touch. However, it's the longer like Dumbledore hairpiece in gray. Again, similar to the face front of Frodo, I think that hairpiece is fine. Like, it works well enough for Gandalf, but I just think the original version was better, more accurate to the movie. So it's not my favorite change. However, I'll take an inaccurate hairpiece over no hairpiece at all. And it's the exact same hairpiece that you saw in some of the statues earlier. Removing his beard, you can see he does actually have a reused face print. I believe this is one of the professors from Lego Harry Potter. It's not a huge deal, and I mean it works well enough, because the face print is normally covered up by the beard, so it still looks like Gandalf. But yeah, when taking it off, it's clear that that is not Gandalf. So of course I would have preferred a unique face for him. However, of all the different face print reuses, I don't think that one's a huge deal. And then you can see back torso print, back dress print also look really, really good. I really love the hood that folds down. And then like the low gray streaks, just that detail to the dress looks really nice. So yeah, I'd say this figure is mostly an improvement over the old one. And if you combine the new and old figures, you could probably make the perfect Gandalf. However, there is one more thing with him. Just like you saw earlier with Elrond, Gandalf also comes with an alternate sitting dress piece, so that way you're actually able to make him sit down. Now this is actually a printed piece, which is a cool touch. I was fully expecting it to be a sticker, so you can see it's basically the same quality as the actual dress, and that's just a really nice touch for display. I really appreciate that that was included. And then finally coming to Bilbo, I believe this is our first time getting an old man Bilbo figure. Of course we got younger Bilbo with the Hobbit sets, but I believe this is the first time we've gotten the Fellowship of the Ring version of Bilbo, and I honestly think he's really well done. All new face print on him, and I think they captured the look of the actor fairly well. He once again uses dual-molded legs to have bare feet, just like Frodo, and his vest design's like nothing all too special, but I mean it looks nice and it fits him well. Hairpiece I think works pretty well too, but the most interesting part about this figure is definitely the alternate face, where he's got like these really intense shadows around his eyes and he's like screaming, and that's of course to represent when he's influenced by the ring, and I think it looks absolutely perfect. Fantastic touch. Really happy that was included here. Now the set does also include ways for Frodo and Bilbo to sit down, however it's not nearly as interesting as the sitting version of Gandalf. You simply just pop off their short legs, and you can replace them with these headlight pieces that have tiles underneath them, so that way if you want either of these characters to be sitting when you display this set, you do have that option. It looks a little bit funny with the studs coming out the back, but from the front I actually think it looks really good, and I'm happy it was included, because you're welcome to use it if you like them, or if you don't care for them, you don't have to. And of course you can use this for any of the other Hobbit figures in this set if you wanted to, but they are specifically meant for Frodo and Bilbo. Speaking of the other Hobbits, here are the other three in this set. We of course have Sam, and then we have Merry and Pippin. You can see all three of these use the same exact hairpiece, and they each have capes around the back just like Frodo does, though of course each in different colors. In terms of the hairpieces, I mean, I think the mold works for all of them. It is that curly hair specifically designed for hobbits. However, I think the colors on some of them could have been better. I think Pippin's hair color is fine, and I believe that is an all-new color for this set. But I think Sam and Merry definitely should have been more blonde. Sam maybe should have used the hair color that Merry currently uses, but then Merry probably should have used an actual blonde color instead of this like orangish blonde. It's a very minor thing, but this hairpiece doesn't exist in blonde, so you can't really customize it if you wanted to, so that would have been a nice touch. Face prints are interesting. I believe Sam and Pippin have new face prints, but Merry's is reused from Lego Harry Potter. I believe that's one of the Weasley twins. However, funnily enough, I think he's got the best face print of any of them, because despite being reused, I feel like it fits him pretty well. I think Pippin's face print's pretty good too. It captures his personality fairly well, and then turning them around, they of course have alternate faces, where once again, I think both of these are pretty perfect. Sam's though, I don't know, to me it doesn't really fit. I don't believe this face print's reused, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. If it's reused, it makes a little more sense why it doesn't fit him so well, but if this is new, yeah, I feel like they could have done a better job designing this face, because I don't know, this doesn't feel like the character's personality nor the look of the actor at all, really. So I wish they'd been done a little bit better. And then, of course, the torso prints across the three of them. Again, I really love both Merry and Pippin's. Merry's especially, I think, is super cool. The dark green with the yellow printing on top just looks really beautiful, and of course, it's very accurate to the movie. But Sam's I still think looks really good and is very accurate to the movie. I just feel like the colors are inherently less interesting on him. And then if we flip their cape pieces up, there you can see the backs of their jackets, which are all very similar. Then, of course, they all reuse the same leg piece that Frodo uses. But yeah, overall, I'd say these figures are fairly decent. I'm a bit let down by Sam, but I think the other two are really, really good. And this is one instance where a face print reuse really doesn't bother me, because honestly both sides of the face look just like the character, so I really can't complain. Here are the next three figures in the set. We have Gimli, Gloin, and Legolas. Gimli and Gloin are of course the two dwarves in this set, and they have once again been redesigned from the original Lord of the Rings wave. They use the same new beard piece, which is a bit shorter than the original beard that they used to have, though I believe Gimli uses the same helmet mold. And I have mixed feelings on these guys. So you'll notice that they use mid-legs instead of short legs, and that was an interesting decision, because the idea was to make them taller than the hobbits but shorter than the elves, because that's how they are in the movies. And I mean, that makes sense, it's a good idea. However, I feel like it still leaves the dwarves looking a little bit awkward, because despite being taller than hobbits, they still are very small in the movies. So as such, I feel like the mid-legs make them look too tall, especially when there's not like a hobbit standing next to them. Just having elves and dwarves here, I don't know, I feel like the dwarves should be shorter. Now, of course, you can very easily customize that just by swapping out these legs for short legs if you wanted to, but that is something I wanted to point out. What bothers me a little bit more, though, is the new beard piece, because on the older version of Gimli, I felt like the helmet incorporated really well with the beard. On the newer one, though, I feel like the helmet's almost too big. It sits much higher than the beard, and I think that's because the new beard's designed to fit the hairpiece as well. But as such, I feel like the shaping around the head's just a little bit strange. I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels a little bit off to me. So that combined with the legs, the proportions just feel a little bit odd. That aside, though, the actual design here is really, really good. I love the design of the helmet, so much printing over every single surface. So full of detail and feels straight out of the movie. I think this is super well done. Gimli also holds the new axe pieces, which you saw for a moment before, which of course fit him super well, and are an excellent inclusion. I love how the beard has the ponytail at the back too. That's a very much appreciated touch. And then removing the helmet and beard, very interesting face print here. I believe this is all new for this figure and it does fit him pretty well. No alternate face or anything on him, but the back torso print looks really nice. And now you get a full look at that front torso print too, which is just a fantastic design. I feel like that could be very useful for your own customs and whatnot. I think this guy looks fantastic. Another interesting touch is that Gimli also comes with an alternate hairpiece. You can see it's the same one that Gloin uses and also the same one that Gandalf had. And I mean, I'm happy they included an alternate hairpiece for him. However, again, it just doesn't feel the most accurate. It just feels too straight and brushed in my opinion. In the movies, his hair is a lot messier. So yeah, I kind of wish they designed a different hairpiece to fit around the beard. But again, just like with Gandalf, he looks great with the helmet. And the hairpiece is just a nice extra alternative. You don't need to display him with a hairpiece. So even if it's not perfect, it is just an extra option. So I can't be too critical. So yeah, overall, I do really like this figure. I just feel like the proportions are a bit off in some places, but that doesn't make it bad by any means. Now, Gloin is a really, really interesting one. Of course, he's got the same beard and hair as Gimli, though recolored. However, that torso print, you see that on him? Do you recognize that torso print? Because that is actually a reuse, and what it's reused from is super funny. So I'm going to take the beard and hair piece off, and now do you recognize it? That's a torso piece that's used for Owen from Jurassic World and Tony Stark from Lego Marvel. It's got like buttons at the top of the shirt. Feels very much like not Lord of the Rings. This is a very modern shirt, so it's very funny that they reused this torso piece. However, honestly, I can't really complain because I think it works fine. Gloin's not like a major character, so I'm not expecting new prints from him. He very much feels like a bonus figure in this set, but his beard completely covers like the quote-unquote modern parts of this torso, so as silly as it looks with the beard removed, I actually think it was a really smart decision. Turning him around, you can see the back of the torso print too, and then the face print's pretty good. I believe it's reused from something in Lego Harry Potter, though I can't pinpoint exactly what, so let me know in the comments, guys. Do you recognize this face print? Is this new, or is this something that we've already gotten before? So yeah, not a ton to say about this guy, because again, he does very much feel like a bonus figure, but I'm happy that he was included. And then Legolas, oh boy, what did they do to this poor guy? So as you will see in a moment, this set comes with a lot of elves, and every single one of them uses the same exact hairpiece. Now this works great on some, and less well on others. However, Legolas is one of them that I feel like it really does not work on really at all. This is just not what his hair looks like in the movies. Luckily, his older face print does still work super well, so if you do have the older version of Legolas, you could swap his hairpiece out. But yeah, while this is a great part, it just doesn't look like Legolas to me. And then on top of that, that face print is awful. Easily the worst face print in the set. That is the young Han Solo hairpiece that they've also reused on like Captain America, Icarus from Eternals, as well as in a few other places. So it feels like a very generic face print to me, but it's also just not accurate to Legolas at all in my opinion. Like it just looks really, really bad on this figure. So once again, if you have the original version of this guy, if you plan on getting this set, I just recommend you swap the headpiece and hairpiece out, because yeah, that's just straight up not good. I do not like that choice of face print at all. Removing the hair though, there's a better look at the torso print, and I do think the torso and legs are really well designed. Olive green is a great color, but I also love like the silver detailing. And then the legs are actually dual molded to show like his boots, which that's a really nice touch that sets this apart from the original version of this figure. And then there's a look at the back torso print and alternate face. Alternate face, again, in my opinion, just terrible, but the back torso print is pretty good. Now, the original version of Legolas was so good that I don't mind a ton that the head and hair aren't perfect, because it is very easy to replace them, but for people who may have not gotten any of the original Lord of the Rings sets. Yeah, it would have been nice if this was a bit better, especially because he is such an important character. But oh well, what can you do? So yeah, overall, this is an interesting batch of characters. Funnily enough, I think Gloin's the one I have the least issues with, but I still think they're really solid. They just leave a little bit to be desired in a few places. Now coming to the next three figures in the set, we have Aragorn, Arwen, and Elrond. Aragorn's probably one of my favorite minifigures in the set, because I feel like they just capture him so perfectly. Really nice design on like his little cloak that he's got going on. The olive green arms are a nice splash of color to make him pop, while also still being very accurate to the movie. And I like how his robe opens up a little bit at the bottom to expose more color. There's a bit of metallic printing down there as well as at the neck. But I think he's super well captured, and the back torso print works pretty well too. However, the highlight of this figure for sure is the face print. I love how they captured his beard and like the slight stubble around it while still giving him his cheekbones. And then he does have an alternate face where he's a lot angrier, though with a very similar design. They captured the actor's likeness super well, and it fits this character absolutely perfectly. Aragorn, of course, also comes with this sword, which is a part of that weapon pack. It's the same one that we saw in the anvil earlier, and the shaping on it is just so well done. Really love this figure from top to bottom. I don't think I could be more satisfied with it. Then coming to Arwen, this figure was a disappointment. Similarly to Legolas, her original hairpiece was just a lot better. Each of the elves used to have different hairpieces, but for some reason in this set they all just have the same one. And while this works fine for her, it's not nearly as good as it used to be. But even worse than that is the face print. I called Legolas the worst face print in the set. This one might be worse, because this face print has been used on so many characters. I don't even know where to begin. But this is the face print I joke about when talking about like female face prints that get reused way too often. And it also just doesn't really look like the actress at all. So I really wish she'd gotten a new face here, because yeah, that is disappointing. In terms of her accessories, she comes with this book. There's no printing or sticker or anything on the cover, but there is a printed piece on the inside, where you can see there's like a little illustration of a tree and then some writing beside it. And then the design of her dress is absolutely beautiful. Love all the metallic silver printing. Just incredibly elegant. The necklace is a nice touch too. And then turning her around. Very basic design at the back of the dress, but I mean, it still works. And yeah, there's the alternate face, which once again, terrible. So just like Legolas, I mean, if you have the original version of this character, you could very easily take the face print and hairpiece off and put it onto this figure, and she would look significantly better. But if you don't have the original version of this figure, which I don't, you're kind of just out of luck. Which is just super disappointing, because she's a fairly important character. I wish they'd done her a bit better. Luckily, though, they put a bit more time and care into Elrond. I think this hairpiece works significantly better for him than some of the other characters. And he's got an all-new face print here, which captures the actor's likeness so perfectly. And I really like the printing on the crown on top, too. The robe's once again very elegant. I love all the metallic printing. And then, like, the actual design matches the aesthetic of the elves so well. Like, it's the same sort of designs we saw in the architecture of the actual set. And then turning around, you can see his alternate face, which I think is a bit weird with a sort of squinty eye, but the rest of it is still pretty good. And then the back torso print looks nice, though it is very simple. And no back chest piece on him, which is odd, because every other figure got it, but it's not a huge deal that it's not there. So yeah, I love this figure a lot. I think it's super well done, and as you saw earlier in this video, he does include alternate pieces to make him sit. Unfortunately, Arwen, despite having a dress, does not include alternate pieces to make her sit. But yeah, I'm glad at the very least Elrond and Gandalf do. And once again, just like Gandalf, this is a printed piece, not a sticker, and it's got the same design as his dress piece. It's a very much appreciated inclusion. But yeah, overall, I'd say these three figures are fairly solid. Arwen's a bit disappointing, but Aragorn and Elrond are some of my favorite minifigures in the entire set. And then the final three figures in this set, we have Boromir, and then what I believe are just two generic elves. Boromir is another one of my favorites of the set. He's just captured so perfectly. In fact, probably even better than Aragorn. The face print's just so well done, feels straight out of the movie. But then the torso and legs too, I absolutely love the colors on them. The red and blue just combine so well, and the touches of silver really tie it all together. The accessories on him are great too, with the printed shield piece, which I believe is all new for this set. And then his sword, which once again is a part of that accessory set. His sword is of course a bit shorter, but I love the shaping on it and like the sort of divot that it has in the middle. It helps it feel very unique from like a standard Lego sword. And then the cape works really well for this figure too. Removing his hairpiece, you can see his alternate face, where he's got a more neutral, stern expression, and then the back torso print looks solid too. Yeah, fantastic minifigure, perhaps even the best of the set. Really love this one. And then the two generic elves are way better than they have any right being. Of course, they use these same exact hair pieces in these same two colors that we saw earlier in this set, being blonde and dark brown. And then their face prints are reused. I believe the female face print is Hermione, and then the male face print is just every single character ever. They use this face print so often. But then they share the same all-new torso print, and then the female character has like a dress piece with it, while the male character just has unprinted legs. But that torso design is just so beautiful. Oh my goodness. All of this metallic silver printing, and like I love the design that comes down in the center. Just super pretty all around. And then when you combine that with the dress, which once again has more of those like intricate little metallic dots, and then the green belt hanging down, it's just so incredibly well done. I cannot believe just generic civilian figures that did not need to be in the set at all look this good. Genuinely so impressed. Turning these two around, you can see the back torso print. Again, more of those little metallic dots, but now there's also some metallic folds in the shirt, which is a nice touch. And then you can see the female character does actually get back dress printing with more of that same design. Interesting that she gets it, but Elrond doesn't. But I'm not complaining, because honestly, I might even prefer like the design of this torso and legs to Elrond's. Yeah, just two very pretty figures who are totally unnecessary inclusions, but man, am I super happy that they're here, because they look great. Somehow these are three of my favorite figures in the entire set. Super, super well done. Alright, man, overall, what do I have to say about this set? I can say I've been filming for, what, like 4 hours at this point? My voice is absolutely shot. It'll probably edit down to significantly shorter, but yeah, this set is a beast. What are my overall thoughts? I mean, it is a fantastic set, there's no doubt about it. When I do reviews of these sets, of course, they are reviews. So I am going to point to little things that maybe aren't my favorite, because that's what you're supposed to do in a review. However, I don't want you guys to think me being a little bit nitpicky is me saying I don't like this set, because that could not be further from the truth. I adore this set. I'm not even the world's biggest Lord of the Rings fan, but this set is just gorgeous from top to bottom. I love location builds like this, and this is just so incredibly well done. The building is beautiful, the nature is beautiful, and it's just so true to the movies. It works as a fantastic display piece, but I also feel like it could be fun to play with too. Yeah, just so incredibly, incredibly well done. Now, a few minor criticisms with the set. I do feel like the big man interior leaves a little bit to be desired. And also, it's a bit annoying to get in there if you actually want to pose figures on the inside. I wish it separated a bit better. The, like, council chairs could use some work. And then with the minifigures, I just wish there was less reused parts. But honestly, like 6,000 pieces for only $500, that's an incredible deal. And I know it sounds very funny to say only $500. $500 is a lot of money, so I totally get the set is not going to be for everybody, and that's totally valid. But if you're someone who's a big spender anyway, and you're going to spend that much on LEGO, I do not think you're going to be disappointed by this set, because yeah, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you will adore this set. And even if you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll still probably really, really like it. So would I recommend this set? I mean, if you can afford it and you're interested, 100% I do recommend this set. I wouldn't call it like one of my favorite sets of all time, but it is just so incredibly solid, and I cannot recommend it enough. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and could give it a like, as well as subscribe to the channel if you're new, I would greatly appreciate that, because that really helps support me in the channel, and also help you see more of my videos. But as of this, what I think is about all I have to say. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!